Hello everyone, this is Melissa, and I'm just going to be walking you guys through the Chapter 7 lessons that I did. This is the first 5 lessons that I did in my student teaching, so they're also some of the first lessons that I did for this class. So here you can start, you can see we're going to start with cells, different types of cells. The students are graded by a different grading every day, and at this day it was to get out their science notebooks. This is before we started our journal entries online. So this is the beginning of that. This is their warm-up for the day, but this is actually going to be in their journals instead of online. This is just a title and what it was. Some of the students didn't really know what a KWL chart was. We kind of did that in our notebooks, kind of in our own way. So there's our KWL. And for the no column, I gave them 3 questions that they needed to include, and they, of course, could add on to that, and that would get them started. And then I always have students think, compare, share. I think that that's a really valuable tool. Students are able to think about it, write about it, pair up with another student, which they're already paired up with, and then share with each other. And then I always call, with popsicle sticks, I call on random non-volunteers, and we share out. Then they work to go and jot down 3 questions that they have that they wanted to put into the W column. And then we watched this little video here. And then we talked about the different types of cells and how everything comes from, like everything is made up of cells, so the cell theory. And then we talked about levels of organization, which is one of our standards specifically. And we talked about organelles. Again, there's another little YouTube video. I really like using YouTube videos. They keep them interested and engaged, and they're not very long. So it's a nice little way to supplement some of the instruction. Then their first actual assignment was to do organelle research. They were assigned an organelle each, and they had to draw and label a sketch of the organelle. The diagrams were not needed to be very elaborate, they just needed to be concise. And they wrote a description of the organelle's function and structure and kind of how they work together. And they did this in their notebooks. They do a lot of stuff in their actual science notebooks. It's just some of the organelles that they might have came across. And they had organelles from plant, animal, and bacterial cells. And then the next day we worked on, this is my second lesson, how does the structure of the organelle affect its function? So we're kind of referring to the day before and referring to the question that they sort of answered in their research. And then we did an organelle function checklist where they went through and they teamed up with a group of students and they figured out the functions for each organelle on the checklist. There was some from bacteria, plants, and animals. And they were able to see the functions of each organelle that we would really focus on, although there are many more. And they use their textbook and their Chromebook as resources. They have a list of given resources on their Chromebook so that they know exactly where they can find things. The extra ticket for Wednesday was on Socrative.com. I used this a couple of times, but I didn't really love it. It was okay, but the way that it saves the information was left some to be desired. So there is that. On Thursday, we did a warm-up on Socrative, which was interesting. And it ended up being okay. So a lot of them didn't really know the answers to these questions. We had to kind of do a little bit of reteach and make sure that these students were actually understanding the material. Because at first, they had a lot of questions, and they were like, what are we talking about? So I know I had to go back and reteach that. This is showing what you know, Thursday and Friday. So they are in groups at this point, and they will make a graphic organizer, basically a poster, and they needed to create a cell, animal, bacteria, or plant, which they received assigned to them, and they had to draw it, label it, color it, and then present a clean, clear diagram. And while one person might be drawing or coloring, the other people were writing up a simple explanation of the kinds of organelles that are important to that type of cell. This one is a rubric for their organelle. It's just one that I use that is sort of general. I ended up making some better rubrics as I went along. And then Friday, they continued to work on that until about halfway through the class period, and we did a gallery walk. So we went out in the hallway and posted these on the wall, and they were assigned to, in their notebook, take notes on similarities and differences between the different cell types. They had to include at least one note from each poster that they visited. So they had animal cells, bacteria cells, and plant cells, and they had to make note of what organelles were included in each one, which ones were unique, and which ones were similar. So that was the first 5 lessons, and then Monday was sort of my 5th lesson because Thursday, Friday was kind of connected. They would review their notes from class, and then they had to read an article. The article had information about the different cell types. So they had to first go in and number the paragraph, cold read the given article, and then they had to go back in through and highlight the key terms or words that they didn't know. Then we did what I call what's the gist, where they kind of give me a very short summary, and we've been practicing that as well. And then we did a second read. So they turned to a partner, they took turns reading the article to each other, and then together came up with 3 questions to answer. Then we did a third read. They had to reread the article to themselves, take notes in the margins, and find evidence to answer the previous questions. So we had some really great questions come about with these questioning and answering, and we actually got a lot of the information from their own minds and wondering what was going on. They had to finish their homework if they didn't finish in class. That's kind of our general setup, is if they don't finish in class, homework on top of their normal homework for the week. And then we went into talking about SpongeBob and what kind of cells he has. So they had to figure out if he was an animal, a plant, or a bacteria. And we had a lot of different opinions about this, and we had to go back and provide some evidence for why they would believe he's bacteria or a plant or an animal. And then we had to go back from the episodes that they've mostly seen. Only a few people had never really watched him, but kind of have seen him around. And that was really interesting because it's something that we've used SpongeBob a lot in our bio class, because there's a really great biology worksheet out there that uses SpongeBob and his friends as examples for Punnett squares, and I really like that one because it's very well done. So we end up using SpongeBob multiple times throughout the 15 weeks. And then lastly, they did a microscope lab. This is on top of the 5 lessons that were the unit. This is still part of the same unit. They had to do a microscope lab where we looked at the microscope and we looked at all the pieces with it. We watched a video and labeled a diagram. And then they had an actual lab where they got to view slides at 6 different stations. Some of them were plants, some of them were animals, and some of them were bacteria. And they had to figure out which was which by what they knew about each of those types. And there were some questions associated with that, and there were some like higher level questions with that. They had to sort of compare, contrast, and rationalize how these cells have gotten to that point. We kind of talked about evolution before we talked about evolution. Overall, I had a really great experience with my my time with my class, and the unit that we're talking about was the first that I did, and it was very successful. Thanks for watching, guys.